Alrighty, thank you so much for hopping on for my first 2 hour test prep on a Saturday. Just trying something a little different, seeing if this might help you guys out, especially those of you that are working or have things going on, that keep you from being able to make it during the week. So thanks for making it on. So I am Robin Hooper. I am the Agent Services Coordinator at the Keller Williams office in Kirkland. Um, as you guys hop on, be sure to mute yourselves. Unless we're, of course, talking. I would love for you to unmute, engage with me, so it's not too one-sided with me just hearing myself talk. So, as I mentioned, I'm the Agent Services Coordinator at the Kirkland office. I've been there a little over 2 years in real estate since 2008 in various capacities. And this is one of my favorite parts of my job is the test prep and helping you guys get ready, get through this, and get to move on with your new career. So today we'll go through some tips and tricks for studying and passing the exam. And then we will go through, I plan on going through math. If you guys don't want to go through math, we don't have to. We can change that up. We can go through any of the test topics that you would like. Do like an open forum Q&A. I'm pretty flexible to whatever you guys need. Sound good? All right.
Yes,
All righty. And can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you much better now.
Perfect. I don't know what's wrong with my computer. I just bought it less than 6 months ago, and the sound is it's just a pain. So I apologize. All right, so let's get started. I am going to add a file to the chat. I haven't had coffee yet, so I've got like this awful like I just woke up kind of sound in my throat. Let me find this attachment. One moment. Sorry, you guys can see all of my embarrassingly unorganized downloads folder. All right. So there's a file that I am uploading to the chat box. It'll take a second for that to upload because it is a big file. We'll talk about that, go through it together. Just want to make sure you guys have that. And again, be sure that you are muting yourself when you come on, just so that there's no like background noise. All right, let's get going. So I like to start just with, tell me something good. Tell me something going on in your life right now is going great. Maybe you just finished school, maybe you scheduled your exam, but I just want to get started on a positive note. So who has something that they can share going on in their lives that's good? Kanika, I know you have something good. And hopefully I said your name right.
Yes, you did. Thank you for pointing that out because I was like, well, I just got on. I don't know if I want to just jump right on and start talking.
Got on. We've all only been here a couple minutes. Share.
Well, I released my first book on Amazon a couple weeks ago. That's doing absolutely amazing. This is a shameless plug. It's called Laugh to Keep from Crying, Finding Humor in the Narcissist's Hidden Agenda. I don't profess to be an expert, but I just tell my story and my experience, and narcissists generally, excuse me, operate from the same handbook. So if you've met one, you've pretty much met them all. And it's really helping people, which was my goal, not to exploit or, quote unquote, spill tea, as people say these days. It is to help people. And the fact that it's doing that, I'm super excited. I've also been asked to speak at a Black Women's Virtual Writer Summit. about my experiences to help other women of all colors. Just how to bounce back and persevere and get through the challenges that life throws at you. I'm also a breast cancer survivor within all of this that went on. I was diagnosed in 2019, October 2019, with stage 1 breast cancer. By December 6th, it was restaged at 3, 2 days before I turned 45. The most devastating thing I've ever went through in my life, but I still kept going, still released my book, still kept, said, okay, I want to become a realtor. I jumped into that. So life still goes on. And that's what this experience taught me. So I'm really proud of myself,
Yeah.
and happy to be helping other people. And that's the same passion that I have with wanting to be a realtor, is helping people find their dream home, because I love decor. I love, you know, houses, and I go to Home Goods literally every week, even though I don't need anything, and I need to stop. I need to stop that. But
Most of us
yes,
don't need to go to Home Goods.
I love Home Goods. I go to Target like literally at least 5 times a week, and I'm always browsing the home section. So it's just my passion, and that's what you want to do in life. And it took me a while to learn that. Now at 46, people say, well, how are you doing all that and you battled cancer? Because it's like I sacrificed a lot to raise my kids to be the phenomenal young women they are. So I don't regret that sacrifice. But now I have to work extra harder to fulfill the things that I wanted to do at 46 that a lot of people were doing, in their late 20s, early 30s. I was married, raising kids. And like I said, I don't regret that, because they're awesome. All 3 of them, phenomenal. So I just wanted to share that. And yes, I'm writing my second book now.
Yay, that's amazing. That's a way better tell me something good than I expected.
Well, hey, it's a great way to start our Saturday morning, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I want to get started with the happy stuff, the good stuff, the inspiring stuff. And that definitely is that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? It doesn't need to be anything of that magnitude, of course, but is there anything else anybody wants to share before we get moving on?
I guess I can share. I'm actually about 3/4 of the way done writing my first book with my
Oh,
son,
goodness.
and always he's always been a big fan of superheroes, but I decided to help him create heroes of his own, and it's something that's always been in his heart to do, and he's 7, so I'm writing. I'm doing a lot, most of the typing, anyways. But his ideas, and we're expanding on them, and just kind of really, really helping him, like, grow and evolve out of that, and really know how to, like, really help him learn to think outside the box, and just really follow his heart. And it's been really good. It's been really good to watch him really develop through this. And
Yeah.
for a 7-year-old, he's already looking at trying to make a series out of it. So I was like, look, man, let's go with book 1. Let's see how that works out, and we'll go from there. But other than that, I guess I'll be starting 2021 with 2 businesses instead of 1. Granted, I passed the test and get my broker's license. So yeah, I mean, it's been a blessing through everything, all things considered, to this point. To be able to still wake up in the morning and have the energy to deal with 2 little ones running around, and still, be a husband at home and work, and just kind of all encompassed. But
Totally.
it's good. It's a good blessing to have, to look into 2021 with bigger goals to reach.
Awesome. Man. Man. You guys and your lives. Big lives. That's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else? Okay, let's get going. So, the first thing I want to touch on is study tips. I do, no, actually, I don't. I don't have this info in that packet yet, but I just wanted to go over a few tips that I pulled together. Truthfully, I don't remember the source that I got this information from. I posted it in the Facebook group. It was an article from I believe it was a college in North Carolina, I believe. I just don't remember which one. Yes, Caitlin, I can speak up. Is that better? I'm sorry. So with studying, I just want to point out a couple of things. As I've gone through doing this a bit longer and longer, I've noticed some patterns of how people tell me that they study. So I wanted to research that a bit further because I'm, again, by no means an expert on um, this kind of stuff, but I did pull this stuff together and I thought it was really great. So I have heard a lot of people tell me that they, read the book, they're reading the chapters, they're going through it over and over. And I want to point out that reading is not actually considered an active form of study. Reading is typically more of the learning process versus the memorization process. Since you're not actively engaged with the material, you're passively engaged, it's easier to forget that. So if reading the book is one of your study tips, that or one of your study plans, that might not be the best route for you. Creating and using a study guide, I have one for you. We'll go through it together after we get through these slides. So hopefully I'll be able to simplify that process for you and help you really focus on what matters on the exam. I won't go through every single one of these things, but I do want to dive into this of studying for a hard 30 minutes versus loosey goosey 3 hours. Um, if you're able to go into your studying with a plan, know what you need to cover that day, maybe if you have your plan to study a half hour a day, or maybe it's 4 hours a week, however you split that up, make that time intentional. When you wrap up one study session, maybe before you move on with your day, this is terrible, you make a plan on how you're going to study the next time. So you finish up, and maybe just for 2 quick minutes, you're like, okay, I'm looking at my study guide. I feel like I've really mastered contracts. The next time I study, I'm going to sit down, and the only thing I'm going to focus on is agency. And then you have a plan. So then when you go to sit down, it's not like, okay, what am I going to work on today? And that process of getting your brain into it, you can just dive in. And 30 minutes of hard focused studying is going to serve you better typically than 3 hours where maybe if you have little ones and they're interrupting you, which God bless you if you have children and you are doing all this multitasking and school from home, God bless you. um, but when you have all these continuous interruptions, obviously you know that that's going to make it a little bit tougher to study. So try to, beg, borrow, and steal 20, 30 minutes on the bathroom floor or whatever that looks like in your household to really, really focus. And so I've been listening about this fact, or listening to some podcasts and reading more about multitasking being a myth. And I thought this was really interesting that for the longest time, and even still now, putting multitasking on your resume is seen as a skill. When and again, I don't know which podcast this was. I believe it was probably Ben Kinney's Win, Make, Give, talking about multitasking isn't the ability to do two or three things at a time. It's the ability to do things wrong, two to three things wrong at a time. And I couldn't agree more. Your brain just is not wired to effectively multitask at a high level. So pick your priority, focus on it, be that studying, whatever that is. Even when you get into your career, when you're making phone calls, when you are updating your database, or if you're working on paperwork, whatever that might be, pick a task, focus on it, then move on to the next. With the practice exams too, and then I'm moving on from study tips. With those are an excellent opportunity to gauge your understanding of the material, not necessarily to use the study exams to learn the information. That's what the coursework is for. That's what the books are for, is to learn. The practice exams are to see where you're at, to see if you're ready to take the final exam. So I wouldn't take those, every single day to study with. I would take them to see, okay, how well did I do? All right, well, I only got like a 60%. What are my strengths and weaknesses? I know that with Rockwell, you are able to see which questions you got wrong. And if you look hard enough, you can see a pattern. Like maybe you're getting consistently the contracts questions wrong. Use that information of the questions you got wrong as part of your study guide. Practice those questions you got wrong and make sure you understand those concepts too. That will be really helpful versus taking the exams over and over until you have the information memorized. So, if you have not tested yet, I'm going to go through a little bit of what to expect with that process. So, when you are done with your schooling, you're going to take like a final exam for fundamentals as well as one for practices. Once you wrap that up, then you're going to get an email from PSI within about 24 hours inviting you to schedule the exam. You're going to need to do that online, and PSI is the testing facilitator. You will register with them on their website. They have multiple locations throughout the Puget Sound area. I do have them listed up there on the screen. There are no closures or anything like that due to COVID. They are operating at a 25% reduced capacity. So if you go to book a location, particularly the Bellevue location, books out pretty quick. Not saying you're going to have an issue, but if you did have a plan to test, let's say on February 13th, and that date wasn't available at Bellevue, take a look at some of the other locations. They are a little bit of a drive, but not, I mean, it's not that you're going to have to wait another week. You'd only have to drive another hour or so. You know what I mean? So kind of pick your battle on what's more important there, your deadline or your location. And then when you finish up your schooling, you have 2 years to get your test completed. So from the time you submit your coursework, your education will expire in 2 years. So you want to make sure you test before then. I would recommend that as soon as you get that email, schedule your exam. It's really easy for a goal to become a someday and then it just be pushed off, especially with everything that happens in all of our lives. It's so easy for things to slip down the priority list. And then you're kind of starting over, having to re-immerse yourself in the information when you decide you want to test later. So schedule it. You can book it out a couple months if that's what you feel that you need. Just get it on the calendar, make it an appointment with yourself versus a goal. When you go to schedule your exam, they are going to have a fee of $138.25. That is paid to PSI for the service of providing the test and grading it and communicating that to the DOL. That is a per test fee. So if you do end up testing more than once, that will be a fee every time. On the exam itself, there is a total of 135 questions. There's 100 questions on the national, 30 on the state, and then 5 trial questions that are not graded and are not part of your score. Those questions are just, they're like labbing them for future versions of the exam. And so if you end up with a couple questions that are totally out of left field, topics that you might not be very familiar with, it's probably one of those questions. You're going to have 3.5 hours to get the test done. Usually, they start everybody at the same time. So, if you get there early, you might be sitting there for a few minutes so that everybody can start at the same time. If you do need to use the bathroom, they will let you do that, but the clock does not stop. When you go in, you'll have your little cubicle area that they're going to give you and your computer and at your desk. The only thing that's going to be there is that computer, some scratch paper, and a little golf pencil so that you can take notes or work through math problems on the exam. When you are finished, you do need to return those things to the testing administrator. They don't let that information leave the building. They are very protective of their exam. Sorry, one second. There's something about coffee, you guys. Sometimes I just feel it in my soul. Anyhow, so when you finish the exam, you'll find out right away how you did. They will give you one piece of light blue paper, and on that piece of paper, it will tell you if you passed or if you failed. They'll show the state section at the top, the national section at the bottom. If you did not pass, they will show your scores so that you can see where you might be able to improve for the next time that you test. If you do pass, it will just say that you passed and they will not give you your score. Sorry. And then if you do pass one section and not the other, you do need to pass the other section within 6 months of passing the first. Otherwise, once you get past that 6 month point, you have to retest on both portions. If you do need to retest, the portion that you'll retake is only the portion that you didn't pass, but the fee is the same. So it doesn't matter if it's all the questions or just some of the questions, it's still the full fee. On the day of your exam, you're going to need to bring with you two forms of ID, one with a photo, one with a signature, so like a debit card and your driver's license. You can bring a basic calculator. That is the only thing that they're going to allow you to bring in that room for sure, is a super basic, like dollar store type calculator. If it's programmable or fancy, they're going to take that away from you. So make sure it's super basic. They're going to take everything on you away and secure it either in a backpack or in a little locker somewhere. So make sure that whatever your layer that is closest to your body is something you're comfortable with, or that, like, if you're wearing like a little cardigan like this, that it isn't super bulky. What they're cautious of is people possibly sneaking answers in, like if you're wearing a big like jacket or something, that you could be hiding something in there. So they're very cautious of that, as I mentioned before. At some point a couple years ago, somebody, I don't know all the details, but I'm assuming that somebody must have smuggled answers out, like wrote down the questions and the answers and smuggled them out, because they've gotten really strict on these rules. But long story short, bring as little as possible with you. And then they may allow you to bring a single use water bottle, but they're not going to let you bring anything reusable in. And then just some exam basics. Make sure you get a good night's sleep the night before. When you are scheduling your test, be aware of what else might be happening the day of your test. If you have a family member getting married, I mean, yes, it's COVID, but or you've got something else going on, maybe you're traveling later that day. Don't plan it on a busy day. Pick a day where you have as little as humanly possible going on. So that is your one thing that day. And you don't need to worry about getting somewhere else or going home and getting ready and, getting the dog and the kids and, all of that stuff. Let that stuff, save that for another day. Make sure you know where you're going, and make sure that you have gas the day before. Eat something so that you don't get hangry or distracted during the exam. And then, so I have some tips and tricks in here. Again, these are in the, goodness gracious. These are in the handout that I included in the chat. I'm going to upload that again really quick because there were some people that hopped on after I originally uploaded that. So that is in the chat. Since these are noted in that packet, I won't cover all of them, but my very, very, very best tip for you to pass this exam, it's not like, oh, I'm sorry, the Roomba turned on. And I'm like, what is that sound? Um, so, the very best tip I can give you is to slow down. When you're sitting there in front of the computer, you have 3.5 hours to take the exam. I think I've had one person tell me that they run out of time in the 2 years I've been doing this. Two, yeah, two. Um, you have plenty of time. Slow down, read the questions, read the answers. For some of you, if you're doing a lot of the practice exams, you're going to start memorizing some of those questions. So I particularly want to point out that on the exam, chances are you might see a couple of questions that are familiar, and some of them are going to look familiar, but they're going to change the question with maybe one word and say not or isn't. And then you have a completely different question being asked. And if you're running on autopilot, you're like, I've heard this question or seen this question 100 times, you click the answer and move on. If you didn't read it, you would have missed that. And then you're getting a question wrong just because you didn't read. Um, and I wouldn't want to fail because of that. So I recommend read the question, read all four answers, read the question again, and then through a process of elimination, choose your answer. And I know some of you were like, that's ridiculous. But trust me, trust me. So many people that haven't passed have said to me afterwards, I think I should have slowed down, or I should have read the questions a bit better, or, I could have probably looked at all the answers a bit harder. So don't be that guy. Read the questions. And then, so with that too, they're they're not writing this exam in a way that's going to help you pass it, which is kind of crappy, but it's true. They have really tricky questions, and a lot of these questions have more than one right answer. So if you're laser focused on finding the one answer, there might be more than one, and you have to use your judgment to choose the one that is the best, the most right given the situation provided in the question, which is going to happen a lot in your career too. There's more than one way to handle transactions. Always, you get two agents with the same client, they're going to handle it two different ways, and neither one of them are necessarily wrong, but that's the one of the little tricks with the question. So I know I've kind of beaten a dead horse with this, but just trust me, slow down, read the questions, use a process of elimination on the answers because of them sneaking in multiple right answers. Um, and then, so as you're going through the exam, you're able to mark the questions that you don't know, and you can come back to them later. They'll flag them for you. You might get lucky, and a future question will be a different variation of that one and then help you answer that past question. Just make sure if you go back to pick up the ones that you skipped, that you don't look at all of your other answers. Trust your gut, leave them. Statistically, if you do review your answers and you change them, you're probably going to change it to an answer that's not correct. So stick with your gut. So as I mentioned, planning on going through some math today. I have some math tips noted in the packet that I gave you. This next slide I feel like is a little bit better than this one. So I don't have all of this noted in the packet. If you want, feel free to take a picture of the screen. This is everything you need to have, well, not everything, but if you memorize this stuff for math, you're going to do all right, you know? So make sure you have these things memorized, these square footage formulas, the conversions for acreage and miles, and then this formula for the capitalization rate. Make sure you know that too. And if you can only, like maybe you jot this down on a piece of paper, and for whatever reason, this is the information that is not sticking in your brain, or you can't seem to remember how many acres are in a square mile, have it on a little, like a note card or something in your car. Be looking at that while you're waiting to go into test, because you're so early, because you got the best advice ever at this test prep thing. And you can, if you can remember it from the time you're in your car until you sit at the computer, you can jot it down on that paper, on that scratch paper, and that's yours. So if that's all you can do, that's all you can do. But really make the effort to have this stuff memorized, as well as these formulas. Cap rate, we already have that noted there, and we'll go through some example problems of that. Discount points, remembering that it's 1% of the loan amount, not the purchase price. And then with mills, remembering that it's a tenth of a cent, 0.001. If you have not gotten to this part yet, mills, ooh, I spelled it wrong there. Mills is a method of applying, like figuring out tax rates. This is the cost per dollar of assessed value. My niece is here. Sorry, guys, she's outside. All right. And then I want to give you guys an update on the DOL and a little kind of peek at next steps. So, after you pass your exam, oh, hold on, I got a question in the chat. Yes. So with the license up, or excuse me, so once you pass your exam, after that, it takes a couple of days for the Department of for PSI, the testing facilitator, to communicate with the DOL that you did in fact pass your exam. So there is a couple day lag before you can apply for your license, and the lag can actually be a bit longer if you don't do your fingerprints before you test. So the Department of Licensing requires that you not only get your fingerprints done before you're licensed, but that they have the results back and in their system. So you need to get these scheduled. I would recommend doing it maybe like the day before or the day of your exam. Little trick. We had a guy who recently joined our office. He had to take the test a few times. It was a little bit of a struggle for him, but he scheduled on his last attempt, he scheduled his fingerprints that morning and then he passed. So maybe that was kind of his good luck charm. I have a question in the chat asking if your fingerprints are already in the system from a past job, can you use those? Um, maybe. So if you have fingerprints from a past employer, you can call that phone number on the screen. They can reach out to that employer or that entity and request those fingerprints be transferred over. However, they would need to have been taken within the last 6 years. For your real estate license, you are required to redo fingerprinting and background checks every 6 years. And then if you do have your fingerprints transferred from another job or previous job, they are still going to need to do a background check. So you'll still need to go in. And the transfer of the fingerprints can take longer than the processing of new ones. So it's entirely up to you how you want to handle that. But you would need to call Identigo and set up that transfer. Otherwise, you can just go to this website, identigo.com. It takes about 5 minutes, if that. There's locations all over the place to go get your fingerprints done. They are going to have a cost of $42.80 when they take your fingerprints. They also do the background check, so those are all just one process. sometimes it can take up to 14 days for them to process your fingerprints, and you cannot get your license until then. In our office, what we've been doing is once an agent passes, we're able to onboard them into Keller Williams and get you started with like your MLS trainings, learning our platforms. So you can definitely get the ball rolling. You're just not able to tell anybody that you're a real estate agent until you're licensed. Passing the test isn't quite enough. You can, I believe it's a misdemeanor charge to say that you're a real estate agent before you're actually licensed and your license is active with a brokerage. So I just want to throw that out there so you guys are cautious with that. And then know what you can be doing leading up to your test to get these fingerprints out of the way. And then Michelle, you had asked, are you able to share the math formula you just showed via email? So all of the math stuff should be in that packet, I think. If it's not, let me know. All right, so on this screen, so in the packet I covered, or I included this breakdown. I just have this ordered a little bit differently than what I included in the packet. So what this is the testing facilitator PSI, they have shared a breakdown of the test questions on their website. You can go on their website and find this. It doesn't look like this, but this is the same data. And so on the left, I have the national portion. On the right, I have the state portion. And I ordered these in order of the most questions down to the least. So basically, this is your order of priority on studying for the national and studying for the state exam. So when you're looking at this over here on the right, these percentages all add up to 100%. You can see how just this one section is 43% of your entire grade. You need to make sure you know this backwards and forwards. When you come over here to national, you look at these numbers. I don't have percentages on that one because it's 100 questions. So the percentages are the same as a question count. And so when you're looking at leasing and property management at 3 questions, it wouldn't make sense for you to spend the amount of time on leasing and property management that you would on practices of real estate. It's just not an effective use of your time. So when you are going to study for your exam, this should be pretty helpful in pointing out what are your priorities. Yeah, I can definitely share this as a document. You guys all registered for this, so I have your emails. I can send these out. It'll probably be Monday, but yeah, I can save these as a PDF and send this all over. Not a problem. And I don't know why you can't see my screen. That's so weird. Maybe try leaving the class and then coming back, and maybe it will pop up. Also, if you're on like a mobile device, make sure you have the Zoom app open. Yeah, try that. All right, so I'm going to do a stop share, and I am going to pull up this packet so we can look at it together. Let me just find it. Okay. Can everybody see that okay? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I can see it.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So you guys should all have this from the chat. So I won't go through all of this, but this is the same breakdown. So this is taken directly from the AMP PSI website. This is that same breakdown I just showed you on the slide. This is what it'll look like when they hand it to you. Like if the piece of paper that they give you when you pass or when you well, yeah, when you pass, they'll kind of break things down like this, just without scores. So you can see right down here for the state portion, this is your study guide. So on the state portion of the exam, here's this big section, 13 questions, 43% of the state exam. And this is exactly which subtopics are included in that. So when you go to study this portion, these are the things you're going to be pulling up either in your books, either watching videos, maybe from Prep Agent or somewhere else. Flashcards, whatever it is that you're using to study, these are the exact subtopics you're going to want to go in on. And same with over here. So if you're not sure what you're supposed to be studying for the state exam, here you go. If it's not here, don't worry about it. For the national, on the next couple pages, I have also the same thing. This is, I think, 2 pages. Yeah, 2 pages. Gonna zoom in here so we can actually see what I am looking at. So let's come over here to financing on the right. Financing has a total of 10 questions. 6 of them are based on recall and recognition. We'll touch on that in a second. 4 of them are for application and analysis. So this is your study guide. If you're not sure what to cover for financing, what you need to know and understand, here's everything. So from these topics, LTV, PMI, interest, PITI, 3 questions. So kind of sucks when you know, okay, I have to know all of this, all the things about all of these, and they're only going to ask 3 questions, but at least you know. At least you know what you need to do, what you need to prepare for, what you need to understand. You shouldn't need anything else guiding you on what information to know, as this does come directly from the people who draft and create the test. I do want to cover these tiny words I have at the bottom of the 4th page. So I'm going to make this really big. So, what this stuff says down here, this is an explanation of how they grade the exam. So they said on the financing topic, there were 6 questions based on recall and recognition. So this is basically memorization of definitions. So if you had to tell somebody what a riparian right is, you could tell them what it is. You don't have to necessarily frame it in a situation, give examples or anything like that, but you can tell them the definition of that. So that's recall and recognition. But they're not just testing your ability to memorize material, they're also testing application and analysis. So, with the application, they want you to be able to interpret the information that's provided to you. Um, so, this is kind of a deeper understanding of not just the definition, but a situation in which that concept or word um, might be used, and then how to apply what you've learned about that in like a real world setting. And then analysis, this is basically testing your judgment. And this is the part where they're looking at picking the most right answer. So when you see those with multiple right answers, that's the analysis portion. So they're expecting you to know this information in multiple different ways. And so we'll talk about a couple of different study aids that I have that can help you get this information into your brain in multiple ways as well. And I won't go through all of this. This is a summary of what was already in the slides. On this page, I have these incomplete graphs up here. So with this one on financing, anytime, like remembering back to when I was in school, when there were things like financing where there was different loan types and I needed to understand what was similar and different between the two, I would do something like this. It didn't look like this. I'd do it with a pen and paper, but I would make a little graph and I would do a side by side comparison. Same as when I went to go buy a new computer, I pulled up a couple, I put them side by side because I need to see very clearly what are the differences and similarities. And so I partially filled this out so that you guys can complete it and make sure that you're understanding the differences between these loan types. You could take this and do it with deeds. You could do it with different types of mortgage insurances, with the different types of appraisals, like all of that kind of stuff, if this helps you. And then in the beginning of, well, it's not the beginning, let me take that back. But throughout the text and the material, you're learning about um, the different ways or the different terms that people use for like buyer and seller, lessor, lessee, offerer, offeree. And all of that was a little confusing to me. That was something that I did, like, that was a struggle for whatever reason. But so in my brain, for me, it was easier to think of givers and takers. Who's the one who's giving or selling the property? Who's the one that's taking or buying the property? And so when I split those up, I thought that was helpful, which helped me see that usually the givers end with an OR, usually the takers or the buyers are the ones that end with the E, except in the situation of mortgages. That one is backwards. The mortgagee is usually the bank, whereas the mortgagor is usually, well, not usually, it is the borrower. And then in here, I also have some advice from agents who joined our office in the last like year or so, them just sharing their feedback on what helped them pass the exam. And then on the back here, I have some other resources that might be helpful for you. I have a Facebook group, Free Real Estate Test Prep, that you are welcome to join. I post the test prep upcoming classes in there under the events tab. I post the recordings of these classes in there. Anytime I find any sort of materials that might help you study, I upload them into the files section. Right now in the files section, I have some printable flashcards. Should be pretty comprehensive, covering the vocab. So if you don't have any, you can print them there and cut them out. I have scans of a different book from another school. I don't even remember what school it was, but it wasn't very common. And so I went through their material, and the way that they ask questions is different than like Rockwell or Real Estate Express. Like it's just a different phrasing, I suppose. So I do have all of that uploaded as well. Tons of practice questions. There's like some matching games where there's like the listed definitions and the list of words on the other side, and you have to match the information up. Again, just a different way to study and process the information. Not on here. I've been saying this for years, and someday maybe I will actually make this a thing. But the game that kids play, and I kind of like it too sometimes, where you have the cards that all face down and you have to find the two that match. You flip them over. That is particularly helpful, and makes it a little less boring than flashcards. Um, and then for books that can help, this book, oops, there. Washington Real Estate, or Insider's Guide to Passing the Washington State Real Estate Exam. So this book comes from Rockwell. If you went through Rockwell, they mailed you one. If you did not, I'm not telling you to go out and buy a thing. If you feel like you need extra help, and what I have in the Facebook group for free isn't helpful, or any of these other free resources aren't helpful, I did get my copy of that book at Half Price Books for $9, and they do have them on Amazon for pretty cheap. Just make sure if you do pick one of those up, it's not older than the fifth edition, because things change. And then in those books, there's practice questions throughout, 3 full-length practice question or exams at the back. Super helpful. And it's just a really nice, tidy summary of all of the information that you learn in the 2 classes. And then, so Quizlet, this is a flashcard app as well as a website. So you can check that out for free. Somebody already put all of the information out there, so you can just use it. And then Prep Agent on YouTube. There is a company called Prep Agent that has kind of like tutoring, but there's also Prep Agent training videos on YouTube for free. So you can hear like a normal guy talking about the national portion of the exam. They don't cover the state, but at least for the national stuff, you can get just normal people breaking it down with examples, like real world examples that really help you understand the information better. My phone number and my email are here. So if you ever need anything, you can feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. All right. So before we move into covering some math, do you guys have any questions on all of that info that I just covered? It was really nice to have a little bit of extra time to give you guys some extra detail on that, not have to fly through. No questions?
I actually was wondering if you could go over that loan table on, I don't know what page it was, tips and
good.
tricks
Yeah.
passing. You said we could fill in the blanks. Is that pretty black and white though? Like when you go back and pull that information, that should be really easy to just fill those boxes in, or?
It should. Yeah. So have you gotten to that information yet?
Oh yeah, I just
Okay.
I'm at the point where I'm pretty much done. I'm reviewing math before I pass and then go backwards and re-evaluate everything before the test. So I just wanted to make sure that this is something that when I do go back and look for it, it's not going to be like finding a needle in a haystack.
No, it should be pretty easy. If you go into like the wait, is it financing or the loan chapter? Hold on, let me look. Yeah, well, what school did you go to?
I'm in Rockwell.
Okay. Yeah, so in chapter 11,
Okay.
they cover it. And yeah, there's only like in the insider's guide, there's only like 2 pages that cover the different loan types. So it'd be hard to miss.
That's totally fine. Thank you.
Yeah. And part of the reason I didn't fill that out and finish it on purpose.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's going to help you guys, to learn it.
That's totally good. I just wanted to ask about that.
All right. Any other questions before we dive into some math? Oh, okay. All right. So, math. What I am going to try to do. Okay. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm trying to be like crafty. Works. So let's get started with this one. Bob's property has a fair market value of $190,000. It's in a county where properties are assessed at 50% of the value and the tax rate is $55 per 1,000 of assessed value. What is Bob's annual tax rate? So I am going to take this screenshot down. If you need it, take a picture. Okay. Perfect. So we've got this math problem. So we've got a property assessed at 190,000, right? Around. And so taxes are applied at 50%, right? And so half of 180 is how much? Or 190, excuse me. Does anybody know half of 190?
95.
Thank you. 95K. So then if taxes are applied at $55 per 1,000, right? So if we have 95,000, then we have 95 thousands, right? We're multiplying that by $55, which gives us our total of $5,225. So then that makes our answer 5,225,000 for taxes. I don't know if that was more confusing the way I bounced around that way. So essentially, this is just a basic tax problem. You take it step by step, divide the property value in two, which is pretty common actually. Most people's properties, if you own a property, your parents do, whomever, take a look at their assessed value. It is always lower than the market value, which is fantastic because nobody wants to pay full taxes on their full market value. It's actually kind of a benefit to the homeowner. But once you divide that in half, then you have 95 thousands, right? So if it's $55 per thousand, you just multiply the two. Does that make sense? All right. So closing is set for August 1st. The seller has already paid the property taxes for the year, totaling $6,000. How much of that amount is the buyer's responsibility? Does anybody know how you would work through this problem?
I think I do.
Okay.
I would first divide 6,000 divided by 12.
Mhm.
And let me write it down myself too. Well, yeah, 6,000 divided by 12, and then multiply the seller's portion, I would say times 7, because I don't think they pay for the August portion yet, and then subtract the total amount of taxes minus the seller.
And then what would you come up with?
Let me get that really quick. I got 2,500.
Yep. Good job. Yeah, that's exactly it. So this is a proration problem. These aren't problems that we would normally do in our actual careers. This is something that escrow will take care of for you. So don't worry. But yeah, Joseph was exactly right. If they paid 6,000 for the year, in this case, they're just going to divide that 6,000 out by 12, prorate it per month, and then the buyer is going to reimburse the seller $2,500 for the portion of the taxes where the seller is not actually living in the property. I'm just going to keep moving through. If you guys have questions, feel free to raise your hand, come off of mute, ask, whatever that might be. Okay, A 3,000 square foot retail property rents annually for $20 per square foot plus 8% of the tenant's gross sales. The building's tenant pays $120,000 in rent in 1 year. What were that year's gross sales? Okay. So again, I'm going to take the slide away. Unless, is there somebody who knows how to do this one that wants to walk us through it? Okay, I will go ahead. Okay. So with something like this, the first thing that we're going to do is we need to calculate the year's base rent. So if we know that we have a 3,000 square foot space and it rents for $20 per square foot plus 8% of the gross sales. And then the tenant pays $120K in rent in 1 year. So we're figuring out what the gross sales were. So, all right, to figure out the year's base rent, we're going to go 3,000 square feet times $20 equals $60,000, right? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract the amount of rent that is attributed to the, or we're going to figure out how much of that rent here is actually attributed to sales. So if we have $120,000 in gross or total rent, and we're going to subtract out the square footage based rent, in this case, it happens to be an even split. So then we know that half of the rent came from the square footage cost, and then half of it came from the gross sales. So if we know that the landlord is charging 8% of the gross sales, then we also know that that gross sales, that 8%, is equal to 60,000, because if that's what they paid, they're equal to one another. So if we have what the amount, if we have what 8% is equal to, then we need to figure out what 92% is equal to, right? So we're looking for the whole. So we're going to take this 60,000 number and we're going to divide that by 0.08. We're basically dividing that by 8%. And that is going to give us, oh, why didn't that work? Hold on. Well, 750K. My little picture's in the way down there. So you're dividing, I've never been able to figure out exactly how to say this right. So we know that 60,000 is 8%. If we divide this by the percentage, that is going to give us the whole number. The whole number being all of their sales were $750,000 for that year. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions on this one? Okay. So yes, this one works out to that $750,000. A square parcel measures 1/8 of a mile by 1/8 of a mile. How many acres is this property? So this is one of those, and there's going to be a couple of these on your test that are super short and sweet like this, and they're just asking you about the conversions that they wanted you to memorize. Does anybody know the answer to this one or how to find the answer? All right. we'll dive in. All right, so square parcel, eighth of a mile by an eighth of a mile. How many acres? So we know that in 1 mile, that is equal to 5,280 square feet. So if an eighth of a mile is what we're working in, we're going to divide this number by 8. And when you divide it by 8, it gives you 660 feet. So what we're working with is a square parcel that is 660 feet on each side. Oops. So all we're going to do there is multiply these two so that we can get our total square footage. So 660 times 660 equals 435,600, oh dear, pretend that's not there, square feet. Got a little excited. So we're not looking for square feet. They're asking us for acres. And when you're doing these math problems, you want to make sure that you know what you're starting in, what your units are starting in, and then what they're supposed to finish with. So keeping your eye on where am I going? So right now we're at square feet. And so to convert square feet into acres, we're going to divide that by 43,560 because there's 43,560 square feet in a square mile. Yeah. So when you divide those out, that gives you 10 acres, which is the right answer. All right. Let's keep trucking along. You guys are awful quiet. All righty. Peter purchased a home for $200,000 and receives an 80% loan from his bank. He has to pay 3 discount points to receive the loan. He is also responsible for a 1% origination fee and a $300 appraisal. The seller paid a 6% commission to the listing brokerage. What is the amount of discount points that he paid? Okay. Anybody know how we do this one? All right, well, let's get it figured out then. All right. Hold on. I like have the picture up on my phone so that I can work this on my iPad. So many screens happening. All right. Okay. So we have a $200,000 home, I wish. And the loan is 80%. I mean, obviously, when you guys sit down to do these problems, you're not going to have to do this. But since I am not technologically savvy enough to figure out how to put the slide on the screen at the same time as my whiteboard, we're going to make it work. So he's getting 3 points. All right, so we have this whole problem. $200,000 house, 80% loan. He's going to pay 3 discount points. And then they start telling you about, let me actually flash back to that. Actually, no. Okay, so they're telling you about the origination fee, the $300 appraisal, the commission. None of that matters. To figure out a discount point, the only number that you need is the loan amount. If you don't have the loan amount, if you have the purchase price and then the percentage that the loan is, you can figure out your loan amount and figure out your points. So with this question, them throwing in the information about the origination fee and the appraisal and the commission, that's all just to confuse you and throw you off. Completely ignore it. These are the numbers that matter in this problem. So first thing we're going to do is figure out our loan amount. If we have a $200,000 house out in fantasy land and we need to figure out that loan amount, or the loan amount, we're going to take that $200,000 and multiply that by zero point 0.8 or just by 8%. If you have a percentage sign on your calculator, don't convert to the decimals. That's just one more way to mess things up. Just multiply it by the percentage. So multiply that 80%, and that's going to give you a loan amount of $160,000. So 1 discount point is equal to 1% of the loan amount, right? So 1% of 160,000 is $1,600, but we're doing 3 points, right? So we're going to do math, and that is going to give us $4,800 for those 3 discount points. And that's it. So it's this big, long problem, right? Of all these numbers that they give you, and then it just works out to being the one number. So again, ignore all the origination, the appraisal, commission. The only thing you need to know on these discount points is the loan amount on the house. Any concerns, questions on that? Okay. The capitalized value of a property is $280,000 and the capitalization rate is 10%. What is the and the operating expenses are 76% of the annual gross income. What is the gross income? So capitalization rate 10%. All right, let's do this. Sorry, guys, I'm like a little slap happy. I feel like my coffee is not kicked in. Okay. 280 prop value. Cap rate is 10%. And the expenses are 76% of the gross income, right? What is the gross income? So we're going to take our property value of $280,000 and we are going to multiply that by 10%. So the reason we're doing this is a cap rate problem, right? The cap rate, the formula is income, equals value times cap rate. Well, I was doing good there for a second, but right and tiny. That is your formula. So if we come down here, and actually let me erase this and do this a little bit different. So if we come down here, we've got income. We've got value right here, right? We've got our cap rate up here, right? This is what we're looking for. So when you have that formula memorized, it's easy to write it out and then just come and then drop these numbers down, drag them down, see what you've got, figure out what you don't have. So then when we multiply these two numbers, then that is going to give us an income of $28,000. So the operating expenses are equal to 76% of the gross income, right? Here's our gross income. So we're going to take this $28,000 number, we're going to divide that by 24%, and that is equal to $116,667, giving us our total gross income. So I know that that is a little bit of a adventure getting through there, but so you start with your cap rate. Write that out. If you know it's a capitalization rate problem, which if you see the numbers, so let me share this other screen really quick. If you see the words where it has value and income and capitalization rate, that's your hint. This is a cap rate problem. Write out that formula, and that kind of gives you your guide of, okay, now I can just drag and drop these numbers, find my missing spot. And then once you figure out that gross value, or excuse me, the net income. Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm confusing myself. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. Once you figure out what the 76% is, then you're dividing it by that 24%, again, to figure out the whole. So when you only have a piece of something, you divide it by whatever percentage of the piece that is to give you the whole. Does that make sense? Like, I see it in my head, and sometimes these math ones are hard to get out because I was never good at math. I hated math. I failed math in high school. Um, I just sucked. And I don't even know that I even got one of these right when I did the real estate exam, because I didn't even really try to learn it because I sucked so bad at math. I didn't even want to learn it. Now that I do this stuff more often, it's a bit easier, but then I don't always find the words to explain it. So hopefully this is helpful though.
This is helpful. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. Okay, thank you. All right, let's keep going. All right, the maximum amount that a bank will lend to a borrower is twice the borrower's annual income. That is not true. So don't think that's true. If a borrower's annual income is $76,200 and she wants to buy a house for $247,000, how large a down payment will she need to come up with? So let's do this math. And this one's actually kind of simple. So I don't even know that I need to draw this one out. So let's take a little peek. So if her annual income is $76,000 and they'll only approve her for twice that amount, then you multiply that by 2, gives you a property value of $152,400. So that's the maximum amount she can borrow. That doesn't mean she can't buy a more expensive house though, because most people borrow less than the cost of the home, right? So she wants this $247,000 house. We're just going to subtract that $152,400 from the 247, and that is going to give a down payment amount of $94,600. A massive down payment for such a affordable home. Got it? Got it. Alrighty. A warehouse is listed at 60 feet long by 90 feet wide with 15-foot ceilings. The building rents for 5 cents per cubic foot per month. What is the monthly rental payment? All right. This one is kind of not too difficult. So we have a building that is 60 by 90, right? Here's the footprint. There's our warehouse. So we can easily figure out our length times width, right? And get our square footage of the bottom, but we're not looking for that. What they're looking for is the cubic feet. So if we're going up 15 feet in ceiling height, then what we're actually building is like an actual 3D room, which that wasn't a really good example, but so we've got this 3D space that looks terrible, but you know what I'm trying to do. So now we got to figure, oh dear. You guys, I thought I'd be able to draw that out no problem. Not true. All right. So you've got your box that I can't draw. But so you're going to need to figure out not only the square feet of the bottom, but we also need to figure out the square feet of the air. So the formula for cubic feet is length times width times height. If we know that we've got 60 by 90 and that the ceiling height back here is 15 feet, 90 times 60 times 15. That is 81,000 cubic feet. All right, so now we know how many cubic feet are in here. And then the rest of the problem said that the building rents for 5 cents per cubic foot. So we're going to take this 81,000, multiply that by 0.05. I'm running out of space in this corner. And so then that is going to give us our monthly rent of $4,050. A borrower takes out an $88,000 loan at 6% interest. The monthly principal and interest payment amortized over 30 years is $585. He also makes a $12,000 down payment. The borrower will, need to pay, that's okay, we'll still work through it, need to pay 1 discount point to the lender. How much is the cost of 1 discount point? All right, guys, this is a really easy one. I want to see if one of you can answer this. So I'm going to wait and give you guys a second to come up with the answer, even though I just showed it to you. But try to figure it out.
Don't you just take the 88,000 divided by 1%, maybe?
You multiply it, yeah. You just
Or
88,000
yeah.
times 1% is $880. It's C. So this is another one of those. The interest rate, the amortization, the monthly payment, the down payment, none of this matters. Remember, the only thing you need to know on discount points is the loan amount. Literally $88,000 loan. These are and then 1 discount point. Those are the only words you need in the sentence. Everything else is just there to confuse you. Because when you see this, you're like, oh my gosh, PITI, amortization, like, oh, this is going to be a hard one. And it's not. It just is there to confuse you. Thank you for speaking up. Alrighty. Through careful management, a property manager increases an apartment building's monthly gross income by $3,000 by an additional, gross monthly income of $3,000 by an additional $500 per month. Assuming a cap rate of 8,000, what is the increase in the building's value? Alrighty. So for this there's 2 ways to solve this. Actually, most of these problems have more than one way to solve them. And I've had it happen where I've had people on here that are like math whizzes and they're like, oh, this is how I do it. So some of you may have other ways of doing this. If you do, let me know. Any of these problems, if you have another way that's simpler. Like I said, math was never my strong suit. But since I took on this role of doing test prep, I wanted to figure out how to explain this in a way that might be helpful. So if you have a different way that is easier or better, let me know. Okay. So the property manager increases the monthly gross income. So their monthly gross income is equal to $3,000, and he increased it by 500. The cap is equal to 8%, and they want to know the increase in the building's value. Right. So one of the easier ways to, well, let's do the long way. Let's do the long way. All right. So we're going to calculate the building's value before there was an increase. Oops. So the value of the property, it used to be 3K income per month, right? So we're going to take that 3K, multiply it by 12, and that gives us 36K for the year. Now with the capitalization rate of the 8%, we're going to divide by 8%. And then that works out to $450,000. So then what we're going to do, so this is before, right? After, the monthly income was 3,500 times 12. So that gives us $42,000. And then we do that same thing again. Divide it by the 8%. And that gives us 525. So we take the 525,000 here, the after value, and subtract the before. And then that gives us a difference of $75,000. And then, so then that is the answer, that the increase in value is the 75,000. Now, I'm going to do a different one or different way to do this same problem. So again, the monthly gross income is 3K and they added 500 per month, and then there's an 8% cap. The quick way to do this one is just to multiply the 500 by 12, giving you an increase of $6,000 per year. And then you're going to take that increase and divide it by the capitalization rate of 8%, giving you the same answer of the 75,000, which is the correct answer on this one. So I would definitely go the second way. much quicker, just to figure out the difference. So with some of these, again, you can make this super complicated or super easy. Just remember on this one, this isn't like your typical capitalization rate problem. So you do want to be aware of that. Like, just because you see the capitalization rate doesn't necessarily mean that it's capitalization rate. Plus, these are working with monthly amounts, and with the cap rates, you're working in annual. And I know you multiply this out and stuff, but it's just not the same as like your typical number. Well, I guess Okay, so this is another one of those problems where you need to know your conversions. This one is kind of simple. I'm not going to work it out on paper. I do want you guys to try this one. So you guys take a stab at this. The owner of a lot that is 99 feet by 110 feet would like to sell it. Similar properties sell for $180,000 per acre. What is the likely selling price for this property? 45,000, 54,450, 60,000, or 90,000. I'll give you guys like a minute to work through that. Any answers? Joseph says A.
I'm gonna guess A.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are both right. So when you have a lot that is 99 feet by 100 feet, length times width makes that lot a total square footage of 10,890 square feet. Does anybody know how many square feet are in 1 acre?
43,560.
Yes. Good job, guys. All right. So when you divide that number by the 43,560, that comes up with 0.25 or a quarter of an acre. So if we have this $180,000 amount, you just divide that by 4. And that tells you how much that lot would likely sell for, which is $45,000. Okie dokie. The closing date is August 16th. The property's fair market value is $180,000. In this community, property is assessed at 50% of its market value, and taxes are applied at 55 mils per dollar of assessed value. Using a 365-day calendar year and assuming the buyer is responsible for the closing day, what would be the buyer's prorated share of the annual property taxes be? All right. Okay, that's not what I meant to do. Hold on. I don't know how to make that stop. Oops. Oh dear. Oh gosh. Okay. Hold up. Let me stop share really quick because I messed something up. Sorry guys. Just trying to like be helpful. Oh. That's no question. Oh. All right, hold on. Sorry guys. What the heck? Oh, oh dear. Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh, give me one quick second, guys. I don't know what I did. Looks like I deleted the slide. I think I did. I did. All right. Okay. This is a confusing one, but this is like my favorite. It is proration, which I don't know why, but I love this one. Okay. So, I am going to, yeah, you are so welcome, Michelle Lynn. Thanks for popping in. Have a great day. Okay. So, closing is August 16th. The value is 180,000. Taxes are 50%, and then they are applied at 55 mils per dollar using a 365-day calendar and assuming the buyer's responsible for the closing day. What would be the buyer's prorated share? Okay, I just wanted to review that, make sure I got all of my information. All right. If the property value is 180,000 and that is assessed at 50%, what is that property value? Anybody? All right, it's $90,000. So that is the number that we're working with. So then we have 55 mils per dollar. So from the slide earlier, we know that 55 mils is 0.55. So then when we multiply the 90,000, or yeah, 90,000 times that, hold on, let me get my calculator. Oh, oops, sorry. 90,000 times 0.055. So that equals an annual tax amount of $49.50. So this is the annual taxes. That is step one. We got to figure out how much they are for the whole year before we can prorate them out, right? So they give you a big hint in this question, and I know you guys can't see it up on the screen right now. They say using a 365-day calendar year and assuming the buyer is responsible for closing day. So they're telling you you're prorating this per day, per diem, and then the buyer is paying for the day of closing. So we're going to take $49.50 and divide this by 365 to figure out the cost per day. 1 second, guys. I need like one more device, like an actual calculator. Okay, so that gives you a per diem of $13.56 for the taxes. One thing I want to point out is when I do that math, it looks like this. So if you do math and you come up with a big long number like this, the next thing we need to do on this problem is figure out how many days the buyer owes the seller for. Make sure before you go and multiply your days by this amount, you clear it out and you multiply it by the 1356 and just round it. Because if you don't, you're going to have a mess of a wrong number. And they will do on the test where they will have figured out throughout the math problem where people commonly go wrong and put that answer as an option. So when you find the wrong answer, you think it's right because it's listed there. So we've got our daily amount of $13.56. Now we got to figure out how many days the buyer owes the seller for. So another part of the information you need to have memorized is how many days there are in each month. I'll be honest, I don't have them all memorized, But my trick is to start with December and work backwards because I know December has 31 days. So November has to have 30. And then October has 31 because Halloween is in October, which means September has to have 30. So September, October, November, December. And then in August, so the only days we're worrying about is the 16th through the 31st. So that's another 16 days. So we're going to add all of these together. And so it mentions that the buyer is responsible for the day of closing. So that's a hint too, because you need to know who's paying for that day of closing. Usually it's a seller. In this case, it's the buyer. So now that we know how many days, we're going to take this number and multiply it by this number. And then this is going to give us our amount that the buyer owes the seller at closing for their property taxes. Does that make sense?
Yes, I was just really hoping you had a easier way to remember the days in the month. That's a lot.
So the only tip that I have ever found, I have it in this packet. So somebody, a long time ago, told me about this song about the days of the month. And I went on YouTube to look for this song. So I was like, well, maybe it's like a catchy tune or something. And I found it to be completely unhelpful, but it might be helpful for you. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31 except for February with 28. I feel like
I,
it's easy to remember February. Go ahead.
I have an easier one for you guys. It's
Okay.
the knuckles. You put your knuckles together. You start on the left side. January, 31 days. So the top of the knuckle is 31 days. And then you go in between the knuckle. That's 30 days. So February's 30 days. Well, it's less than that, but then and then you go to the next knuckle over. That's 31. Next, the gap in between the knuckles 30. Next knuckle 31. Gap in the knuckles 30. Other one's 31, and then you go over to the other hand. So you'll have July on this top knuckle,
31.
August on the other top knuckle. August is also 31. September 30, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31.
So it's almost every other month.
Almost. Yeah, except July and August are both 31.
Mm.
And
Hence
then there's November.
the jump over to the knuckles.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's so great. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December.
Yep,
That's fantastic.
that's the French way.
Ah,
Thank you.
No worries.
gosh. That is amazing. Did you guys all get that? Quentin, you get a gold star. I need to make a note of that so that I don't forget it. And then I put it in, like, I'll get a little picture or something and
That's
draw
awesome.
it out. That is fantastic. Oh, all right. Well, maybe I'll remember for a few minutes. All right. Yeah, there. So that should help with the days in the month. And then with this, it's just step by step. Okay. I can't figure out taxes unless I know what the value is. And then I can't figure out the per diem unless I know how much it is per month. And then once I know how much it is per day, I need to know how many days. And then you just multiply them together. So it is a long one, but it's very methodic. And I like this kind of problem because all of the info you need is in there. This one, I don't have a really good breakdown on how to do it because it was never going to fit on here. Okay. A property's net operating income is $12,000 per year. If an investor wants a 12% rate of return, how much is the property worth to him? All right. So this one is a capitalization rate problem. So we're going to jot down income equals value times cap rate. So that is how you should start your capitalization rate problems. I do genuinely think this really does help. Amber, have an awesome day. Let me see the rest of your comment. Where can I print that information that you went over in the beginning? So on it'll realistically probably be Monday. I will email you guys the slides that we went over in the beginning. So then you can have a copy of those as well. And then I'll drop that test prep handout in there too, in case you didn't save it. And then I'm also going to post a recording of this within that Facebook group on Monday too. Okay. Back to the problem. So property net operating income is $12,000 per year. Investor wants a 12% rate of return. How much is the property worth? Okay, so we know that the income is 12K. And we know that he wants a 12% rate of return. What we're looking for is value. We already knew that. We didn't need to draw it out to figure it out. But this is helpful in that if you had this number and this number, you could just multiply, but you don't. So we can't multiply. So instead, since we can't multiply, we're going to come over here and divide. So you're going to divide 12,000 by the 12% rate of return, and that is going to give a $100,000 value. Boom. So I don't know if that's helpful, like how you can see how those cap rates literally drop down. If you can't multiply, the only other option is to divide. So hopefully with cap rates, you guys are like, oh my gosh, that's like so much easier than I thought it would be. All right. One of the more confusing questions in all of the math, I feel like at least, or at least the wordiest. A parcel occupies the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter and the south half of the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of section 4. How many acres are in this parcel? Beat down. All right. So there's so much information here, right? So what do we know about the sections and all of that stuff? So we know that a section is 640 acres, right? So if we know one whole one is 640 acres, we're kind of going to figure out how much all of this is. So northwest quarter of the southeast quarter, it doesn't matter where this lands on the map. You're not going to have to, like, they're not going to make you identify where a parcel is on one of these like section township range maps. You don't need to know all of that. So let's just dive into the easier part of the math. All right. So a section equals 640 acres. So we know that a quarter section equals 160 acres. So a quarter section, like on the problem, it says a northwest quarter of the southeast half. And maybe this will be helpful. Hold on, let me. All right, so you got your grid. This whole thing is 640 acres. This one is 160 acres. And then within here, these divide up even further. And then in here, each one of these boxes is 40 acres. So goodness gracious. All right. So we are looking at like a half a quarter section, if that makes sense. So half of a quarter section, like the south half of the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter, is taking this little box even further, where these are all 10 acres a piece. Crazy, right? Crazy. So this math problem, what they are looking for, sorry, I know you can only see the top of my head because I'm leaning over my iPad in front of me. Sorry, guys. Basically what they're looking for is this. So I'm going to put this, I wish I could put these problems up at the same time that I show you this. So I'm going to read the question again. A parcel occupies the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter. Oh man, I'm really complicating this, you guys. I feel like, let me regroup my brain really quick. Give me 1 second to get a sip of coffee. Alrighty. This is section 4, is what we're going to call it. So, a parcel occupies the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter. So my directions aren't right. Technically, I should have drawn this down here, but that's okay. So we need 1 quarter. So the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter. So we're talking about 1 quarter of these boxes. And the south half of the southwest quarter. So we're talking about half of a quarter. So we're talking about 1 quarter and then a half of a quarter. And those are the only ones we're looking for. So if we, if we need 1 quarter and then a half of a quarter, how many acres are that in the black?
Should be 60 acres.
Yeah. So if we go back to our problem, northwest quarter of the southeast quarter. So what you're looking at is a quarter. And that's so confusing with this grid system, but all you need to know, 640 for the whole box. And then when you split it down, it's 160 acres per quarter, right? And then you can quarter. You can quarter a quarter. So you're taking the 160 acres in the quarter, dividing that into quarters, which are those 40 acres per quarter. And so we're taking 1 quarter plus a half quarter. A half quarter is 20 acres plus a quarter that is 40 acres equals 60. Does that make sense at all? Probably not. What I did on this problem to really understand the math was to do what I just did on that with the map, with drawing out the quadrants, and then 640 down to 160 down to 440s down to 410s, dividing that out. Because once you kind of get that and you know that a quarter is 40 acres and half a quarter is 20 acres, then when you look at something like this, you're like, this is just asking me what 40 plus 20 is. So that all said, the amount of time it took me to really understand all of this math was not worth 1 point on the exam. I'll be totally honest. So if you're looking at this problem and you're like, I'm going to have to spend like an hour figuring out how to even understand those acreages, worry about something else. Like if you can spend an hour memorizing your conversions and that will help you get closer to being able to finish those 4 math problems that involve conversions, do that instead of spending an hour on something that will literally be maybe one answer, one question. You may not even get this question on the exam. So we're sneaking up on 12 o'clock. I really hope that all that was helpful. I wanted to take a few minutes and see if you guys had any questions, any particular material questions, process questions, anything like that.
Robin.
Yes.
So, well, first I want to say thank you because that's been super, super helpful. It really has. I just finished the fundamentals class with Rockwell yesterday.
Mhm.
So now we've had the portal open to go take our final and everything else and the practice exams. But we did finish, the math yesterday, and it's been a while since I've had to do math. So it
Sure.
definitely threw me for a spin. But a few of those arithmetic problems were on the professor's showing yesterday. So a few of them he broke down. It's common, just like the knuckle trick for the months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's probably one of the oldest tricks in the books, but I mean it does make
I've never
sense.
heard that. Like, never.
It's
Which
really, really
blows my
good.
mind because I do this. I used to do this once a week, so it's like I'm doing this kind of often with a lot of people, and I'm amazed nobody's told me that. Makes me so
Yeah.
excited.
No, I think the song, and I guess if you have it written down and we're able to look at it, it could definitely help out, some people. Everyone learns differently,
Totally.
obviously. So
Totally. Yeah.
I'm a visual person. I need to write it down on a board and like go through the sections. So
Yeah. I'm very visual too. And like drawing some of these spaces out is so
yes.
helpful. So like, yeah, do whatever helps you. Like who cares what that method is? If it helps you
Um,
pass, do it.
yeah, for sure. I think I guess one last question for you would be since I was kind of getting kicked out from the Zoom call, I was running an errand, so the reception area was really bad.
Mm.
Like you mentioned, we'll be able to kind of take a look at the breakdown for the questions on the exam, what sections are being covered on the actual exam, and we'll have
Mhm.
access to that on Monday.
Mhm. Yeah, I might try to send that out today. We'll see how my day comes together.
Okay,
But
well, thank you.
realistically, it'll probably be Monday. I'll send you the packet that we went through, and then I'll send the slides that we went through as well at the beginning, all the test slides or the tip slides. So I'll get that stuff out to you. You guys have all of that. And then I'm going to do another one of these. I do one, well, so this is my first 2-hour session that I've done. And the first one I've done on Saturday in a really long time. So I'm going to do one long one a month on a Saturday. And then the next one of these that I am going to do will be, let me look at my schedule. I'm doing Thursday at 5 o'clock. And so depending on who's on, I don't always go through the tips and tricks at the beginning. Sometimes I skip it because if I recognize a lot of people that have already been on, I'm not going to go through it again, but I'll save it to the end instead. So then you don't have to sit through it more than once if you've already been through it. But I do try to change up my topics. I don't know what we'll go through on Thursday. I love suggestions though. So if there's something you're struggling with, something you just want to hear somebody talk about, let me know and I'll cover it. Any other questions before we go about our days?
No, just thank you for Saturday. The morning time is fantastic. I really so thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm really glad. Thank you guys so much for showing up. And as always, if you need anything or think of any questions, feel free to reach out. My info is on the back of that packet. And I will hopefully see some of you on Thursday. Have a really great Saturday, guys.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.